The story about how you became the mortgage broker.
That's a very long story.
Right. I've only been a part of it for 33 years, so.
Okay.
Okay, let go.
Introducing the Mortgage Broker Podcast, where we explore everything related to mortgages and the home buying process. If you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Vanessa, the Mortgage Broker. So, let's get to it. Oh, today I have with me my sister. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Meghan Hammond, the owner of Audacity Management, and your sister.
You know, people have been waiting for the real estate market to crash.
Right.
Right?
Which I'm like, okay, people have been yelling this for years, and I keep being like, hey, Ness, is this happening? And you kept being like, no. And I'm like, either she's dumber than I think and I'm just being a nice sister, or it's not crashing. Is it crashing?
Not from what I can see, from
Okay.
where I'm sitting.
Consistently, you've gotten this right, you know what I mean?
I did say years ago when the market started going crazy in 2016, and my advisors were like, well, what does this mean? And I was like, well, it's going to keep going. It's going to start in Toronto, and it's going to keep going east and west.
Yeah.
And then we're going to see it in our own cities.
Yep.
Some people believe me. A lot of people didn't, but
well,
that's
and
fine.
It was, what did you call it at the time? It was like Drive to
Survive.
Drive to Survive. So basically you'd sell your whatever in the GTA and you would drive until you could actually afford the market that you got into.
Yep.
With the commute you'd have to take back into GTA.
Yeah, so I was talking with Frankie about, people keep saying, well, the market's going to crash, and this just happened with Silicon Valley Bank, and then there's been new announcements that have come out about immigration and foreign buying policy.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, you shouldn't be buying until you're ready. Right. Because there's always going to be those outside.
Right. You can't control any of that.
You can't control any of it.
Nobody saw this pandemic coming.
Right?
Well, some did.
What I will say about some of the chatter around the immigration and foreign buying is now that it's been opened back up for foreign buyers. It was supposed to be something that was put in place for 2 years.
Right.
Now they're starting to make some amendments to it. That's kind of why we saw a big influx of purchases or housing prices before. Mm-hmm. So my only worry from where I'm sitting right now is we've opened that back up, or there's been policies to try and open it back up. Mm-hmm. So all of that work that was just done in order to curb inflation and control the housing market, where is that going to leave things?
Right.
So I'm not an analyst. I'm not an economist.
Right.
There is still more demand than there is supply.
Right.
And until that isn't an issue anymore, we're not going to see a crash.
Well, and the other thing too, over 2020 and 2021, there was effectively no immigration.
Right.
And we still saw massive, massive demand.
Right.
So now, we've already frozen immigration, etc., and we're turning all the funnels back on. I don't understand how we're just all of a sudden having the demand.
Well, fun fact, the immigration numbers that they've put out are people who actually already reside in Canada. They were here on a work permit, or they were here on a student visa, and now becoming permanent resident. Mm-hmm. So it's not that 1 million people have actually just come into Canada. It's that we actually still need housing for those people who were still here. Mm-hmm. So when the question being asked on those surveys, how many people do you have in your home, et cetera, and they're going, oh, we're doing great. It can't be that bad. Well, a lot of, they're saying, do you have a place to live? Well, yeah, they're living in a student residence, or they're living in student housing, right? They're in maybe a semi-detached place and they've got 4 students living in the same residence, right? Those people, when they finish school, are going to need a place to live, right? So if they're in student housing right now and then, they're looking at, should I be buying or should I be renting? Right now, the biggest thing is, do I have a down payment? Because rent is crazy.
Right.
Rent right now is, in some cases, more than a mortgage payment. The issue is that having the financial security of a down payment to back up that payment, right? And then also applying for the mortgage, etc. Again, I am not an economist, an analyst, but where there's still demand and there's not enough supply,
right,
I'm willing to bet that we're going to see housing prices increase
again.
And so I'm having those conversations with, some of my first time buyers right now, because they're going, oh, well, the rates are dropping. Right. And we're still able to get housing under asking. And that's quickly changing again.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see over asking. You're going to start seeing the slogans, purchased, over asking. I'm starting to see purchase agreements with no conditions on it.
Right.
So no condition of inspection,
right.
Which by God, please get an inspection. Also, no condition of financing. Again, please put in for financing.
Right.
Because what happened last year, and this is something that also should have been talked about more, wouldn't you rather know as the seller, instead of taking a non-conditional offer, wouldn't you rather know as a seller that it's actually going to close?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So do the due diligence or allow the buyer that week to put their financing together, to put the home inspection together, so that when the home is actually closing 2 and 3 months later, you know that they've already been approved for the mortgage.
Right.
Instead of, well, they offered us $100,000 more and there's no conditions and it's cash offer.
Right.
Very unlikely that anything is a cash offer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It may be partial from a sale of another home, but it's likely that there's going to be some type of financing that's attached to that.
Yep.
And so in a lot of cases, I had clients who are trying to buy something else. They're selling their home and it's not closing because there was no condition of finance on the other end. Right?
Yep.
Or I have clients who are going, well, we're going to lose the house if we don't put in a condition of finance.
Right. Then it might not be your home.
It might not be your home.
Right.
So, again, working with a broker who has close relationships with, agents that they trust. Everything is relationship based in this business.
Yep.
And it should be.
And it is. Yep.
You should work with the people that you trust.
Yep.
So making sure that team is cohesive between the mortgage broker, your real estate agent, and your lawyer.
Yep.
That's going to get you way further ahead in an environment like this.
Yes.
Because, as I said, there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be things that are affecting the market, the timing, the rate. So a question that I get asked a lot is, what makes you a little bit different from other agents, brokers? So I am dual licensed, and I often get the question, why? Right? But my dual licensing is actually in Nova Scotia, and it's a heartfelt thing for me. It's not just I can be licensed anywhere. It had to make sense for making that decision.
Well, it's a big step to actually be licensed in 2 provinces. That's why you don't see many others doing it. But for you, it was not a business move, which I think anyone who is doing that is usually trying to make a smart business move. But for you, it was actually a lot more close to home.
Yeah.
Literally.
So I thought I would share with you how I became a broker and some of the different kinds of features that I can offer than others in the industry. But I'm having my sister, kind of guide me through this just to make sure that anything that I've forgotten, she can kind of remember for me. So once upon a time, most of my family is actually from Nova Scotia. My parents met there. They were young, in the cadets at the time, and
14 and 16.
Yeah,
They
so
were
they were young, and then they found out that I was coming on the way, and super planned.
Yeah.
And so, looking for opportunity, they actually moved here to Ontario. And my dad was fortunate enough he's worked hard all his life, and he worked for a great company, but it brought him here and it kept him here. But Nova Scotia isn't a place that anyone in our family forgets about. They do still go back and they travel there, 4 or 5 in the last couple of years, 6-7 weeks a year.
Right. Well, and fortunately for us too, that meant Nova Scotia became a bit of a second home for us.
Yeah.
When we were younger, we would spend a month to almost 2 months a year in Nova Scotia.
The entire summer. Yeah. We'd get dropped off by one family member and picked up by the other at the end of the summer. It was, that's just the way that it went. And I've always kind of kept that close to me. I know that you have as well, but I always try to get out there at least, twice a year if I can get out there more than that. But, we have lots of friends and we have an insane amount of family out there.
Right.
So it wasn't just a business decision for me. It was, I'm able to help people that I care about here in my current environment, friends, clients that have become friends, family, and I wanted to be able to do the same thing in Nova Scotia. It just makes sense to help the people that you care about. So,
well, and hopefully it'll bring you back there more often. You could maybe do some work and play.
Well,
we'll see. They moved to Toronto. We end up in Brantford a couple years later.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's mostly childhood from there. And then you end up in the finance industry.
Yeah, so I went to school. Well, I went to post-secondary school after high school. And, there wasn't a lot of jobs in the teaching industry when I was, going through schooling. And I wanted to work. I was fortunate enough to be a summer student, actually, at Chrysler, which was very helpful, beneficial at the time. I understand now they have parameters around it where you're only allowed to work so many weeks. My parents are, workhorses. So in the old way that they did things at Chrysler, I was the first student in and literally the last student to leave.
Right.
Like I was finishing my last shift and then going back to school. Right. I didn't get any downtime in between, but I think that that's something too that's instilled the work ethic. Because, when you've got parents like that are like, oh, no, you think you're putting your work boots away. I'm actually taking you over to my work now for a week. Right. And what do you mean I can't go back to school early and see my friends and like relax? What does this even mean?
Well, and to your point, I remember Dad working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day with a commute from Brantford to Brampton. So we didn't get to see him much when, well, it depended what shift he was on, but we saw from a young age that you do what you got to do.
Right.
But
with that comes, like, because I had that opportunity to work as a summer student, when I kind of got the taste of making my own money and doing the things that I wanted to do. And it was
good money.
It was great money.
Yeah.
But our parents provided us a lot of opportunity too. Yeah. And then having that structure and that work. And so, I applied at BMO, Bank of Montreal, years ago.
Step one back.
Yeah.
You had one other financial
Yeah,
job.
actually,
Yeah,
well,
there
that
you go.
was an
How'd you
interesting one.
forget?
This one, I think I can confidently say built a lot of character for me.
Yes. I do remember you becoming quite a human then.
Yep, yep. It was interesting. So when
That's in a positive way.
yeah,
Lots of growth. It was an interesting time in your life. Yeah.
plus I have lots of stories. But when I guess that would have been my first real job out of school. I worked at a payday loan company.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of different beings that come in and out of those types of places. But what it taught me was money, how to count money, how to count it really fast. And and then I, applied to BMO, and I moved up 5 positions in a 5-year time frame. And then from there, it just felt like there was more out there. It was like, I kind of got in this space of like, this can't be it.
Right.
And it's dangerous when I get in that space because all of a sudden I'm making all these big changes.
Right.
But it was, there's got to be more. And I was introduced to an excellent financial planner from IG Wealth Management, Glenn Gadet. He had connections with a few of different lenders. So when I was kind of at the end of my career with BMO, I was more so the person who did all of the background work for all of the mortgage specialists.
Okay.
Because I really liked it. I remember at the time I was really being pushed to, we want you to go into financial planning. And I was like, it's just not for me.
Right.
Like, I really liked the lending, the restructuring, like figuring things out. And so
the problem solving.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And so I had great mentors when I was with BMO and taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And being in the background and doing that kind of work, you really get to see a lot of different situations and client profiles. And so, he had reached out to one of his contacts because everything in this business is truly networking, right? They weren't ready to make, they weren't ready to make a move in the sense that they were closer to retirement, and it just didn't make sense for the time frame that they had ahead of them. And so it was kind of, well, I know someone who's motivated, loves to work hard. Here's her number. And I remember getting the phone call and being like, oh my God, like I'm so busy right now. Like, why? Who are you? What's going on?
Right.
And it was, like I'm going to send information off to who needs to receive it kind of thing. And at the time, who was my boss sent me an email at 11 o'clock at night. I want an interview tomorrow. And it was like, whoa, like, okay, sure. And at this point, like working at BMO, I was full salary.
Right. This was a huge mind
Yeah.
shift for you.
And I had
that was a
less,
big leap of faith.
It really was.
Right.
And I had less than a week to decide if I was going to be making said change.
Right.
And I was just like, well, you know what? I just bought my first house a couple years ago. I don't have any kids yet. So if I do this and it doesn't work out, the only person I'm disappointing is myself. And I went, all right, let's do it.
Right. Perfect.
So, and I moved over to IG, and I worked with some really fantastic people. Again, instrumental people in my career, in the career path that I'm still building and moving forward with. Yeah. And with working with those people, I got to work with their clients. Yeah. So, again, profiles from all different shapes and sizes. Yeah. And that's why I keep saying, in some of the interviews that I've done with some of my guests is that financial planning, that IG.
You don't work there anymore, so you can't necessarily speak to what the way that they work now is. But at the time that you worked there, it was very financial planning forward. Yeah. I ended up being a financial planner with them for just under 2 years. And when I was there, we had 3 specialists that would help you. You were one of them, the mortgage specialist. You have your insurance specialist, and you have your investment specialist. I just remember thinking like how deeply specialized each one is, and to not actually consider all three of them in one plan. It was a blessing to actually have that level of financial planning, like to actually have your team of specialists.
Yep.
But I always did think that it was mortgage has to be the key center of the planning. And you seem to prove that a lot with your clients.
Yeah, I mean, I had opportunities to sit with those other specialists that are, you know, very entrenched in their own craft.
Yeah.
And at the time, we would all get the same plan as is, or what the current situation was. And, you know, the investment specialist would do their portion, and then the insurance specialist would do their portion, and then I got to go in and, you know, do my part. And I would always let them go first because I wanted to see what it was that they were trying to do, or what the goal was for those two pieces.
Yeah.
And then I could come in and go, okay, well, I can restructure all of this, and I can get you that extra $400 a month in an automatic payment that goes directly to their RSPs or whatever the savings plan that they were working towards. And then I can take some of this restructured debt, and we can take, let's say, $200 a month and put it towards their insurance, right? Because anytime that you have a mortgage, it needs to be protected.
Right.
Whether that's through creditor insurance, not the best product, just depends what you can actually qualify for at the time. But again, goes back to, I have people. So,
well, and I think that's the thing too. Sometimes you'll go to an investment specialist or you'll go to an insurance specialist, and they'll be like, well, and if you do this, and if you just put $200 into your investments a month, then this is a great plan. And you're like, but where's that $200 coming from?
Right.
And if they're not actually changing their behavior with money,
right,
or they haven't restructured,
where's it coming from?
Looking at an investment specialist being like, well,
that's a great plan, but
right.
It doesn't seem like it's achievable if you're not working on the other pieces first.
Right.
So, yeah, I worked there for just shy of 10 years.
Whew. That was a decade, wasn't it? My goodness.
Yeah. Worked all over Southwestern Ontario. Again, connected with great people, worked with, you know, great clients, some that are still clients today, just because they're not traditional bank type clients. But yeah, it was a good 10 years. But as you know, with some larger corporations, things change. Not only restructuring of the mortgages that I do, but, you know, they restructure who stays, who goes, where they can, you know, trim off a little more fat in terms of expenses. And there were some changes that were being made, and it just didn't fit my lifestyle anymore.
Well, and I also think whether or not those changes were made, it also, where they were at, you had your eyes set on something different. Eventually, you did want to be a broker.
Well, back you up a little bit, because first and foremost, I wanted a family. Right. I didn't know how I was going to achieve that goal, plus still continue on in my career at the pace that I was working.
Right. And you worked a lot when you were at Investors Group.
Yeah. I think everybody, it's commission, right? So it's the mindset, if I'm not working, I'm not making money. I was looking for a different kind of balance.
Absolutely. And I know that it was balance in life, but then how do you actually work more effectively and put what you know to more use for your clients? So that's why you eventually wanted to expand out into the brokerage space. So over the pandemic, actually about, 9 days before Trudy was like, everybody go home.
Yeah.
We got to welcome in my nephew.
Yeah.
And your son.
Like the best thing of my life. I should be talking about that more than anything. So I had Henry at the very beginning of March of 2020.
Yes, what a year to have a kid.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah. I think a lot of people built a lot of tenacity throughout that year. And I think it made people view things a lot differently. So I know for myself, it was, thinking about coming back to the career that I've done for the last almost decade. What is that going to look like now with a 1-year-old?
Yep.
But also, I think it really shone a light on what's important.
Yep.
Like, is working endless hours the most important thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I had always been curious about the broker space. Of course, when you're in a traditional mortgage type role, that's scary.
Very.
Like, you're not going to make it because it's dog eat dog and nobody's going to support you and you're on your own, and like the narrative for that is so misleading. And I'm glad that even though I kept being told it over and over again, I think the reason that they try to share that with you is so that you don't make the move, so that you're that scared. But the curiosity was too much for me, and I needed to know.
Right.
So what I did,
a better way for you and Henry. And Adam.
So when I was on mat leave, when Henry was about 6 months old, I did my broker license. Right. Because I, had nothing better to do with a 6-month-old. Right. But it really opened my eyes to what this space was or what it could be. And I met some, again, great people through training, and I've kept some of those contacts to this day. Right. Met them in November of 2020, and some of them have been very, very supportive in my career since, being a part of the broker space. So, when I went back after mat leave, again, I was kind of in that same headspace where I was with BMO, was like, this can't be it. This can't be all that I was meant to do. Right. Like I said, it gets dangerous when I get in that headspace because things start changing, and, I did a lot of walking over the pandemic, and that probably wasn't helpful for the other people around me, but it gave me a lot of clarity, and I didn't know what this was going to be. I didn't know, but I kind of went back to how I felt when I was leaving a very secure position with BMO and going to a position of full commission. Right? Yep. And the other thing is, because I've had my son, I look at things a little bit different. And the biggest thing being, one day when he's trying to make a decision, I'm going to be saying to him, do it. Take a chance on yourself. Bet on yourself. Do these things. So, like, how can I sit here and not do it for myself? Right. So I did it.
So you did it.
I did it.
It's a big move.
Yeah. It was a big move. I had daily panic attacks. So for anybody who thinks that I just waltzed right into the broker space and everything was, easy peasy, it was not. But it was, if I didn't, it was a disservice to my family because I knew that there was more out there. And why am I not taking the opportunity to find out? Right. And if it didn't work, I wasn't stuck. No. So it was taking that chance and really running with it and having the daily panic attacks. And I'm sure my family got a little bit tired of me at the beginning because I was quite scared. But, I joined a team that I wouldn't have had the year that I had without them.
Right, yeah.
So I'm hoping that soon Jason will come and be a guest for me. But he has been very instrumental in me coming out into the space and being extremely supportive. And the narrative that, brokers are bad and don't work with brokers, they're just going to take your money and nobody's going to support you. It is like the furthest thing from the truth. And honestly, a part of me wants people to still think that, selfishly, just so that, you know, there's not there's not a huge abundance of people.
Right.
But at the same time, like, we're all here to support each other. There's more than enough business to go around. And what's the point in making enemies when you can make allies?
Right. Yeah, the pandemic was definitely a different experience for you. And choosing to get your broker license during that time was quite surprising. You also got a dog over the pandemic, so your life got real crazy. You had a brand new puppy, a brand new human, and
yeah, I think I saw
started...
a meme during, like, just into 2021. It was like, you know, you were in the pandemic if you had a baby, got a puppy, and an air fryer. And I was like, check, check, check. I am like the definition of I've lived through the pandemic.
Right. I think for the family and friend side, nobody doubted you for a second. A lot of that doubt was mostly in your head. But it was, that mental leap was quite a big one. And I liked that you compared it to the mental leap that you had before, where you went from employee to self-employed and self-employed to now being on your own. How has your work-life balance now actually changed? Did you actually achieve that?
Oh.
Or are we trying to achieve it? I don't know if women can, but...
Well, I mean, that's a whole different story. I mean, I think having community around you is a big thing. And as much as I give so much kudos to people that I've worked with and mentors, and I know I said that my friends and family, I probably drove them nuts, but the biggest support was my partner, Adam. So without him, I wouldn't have been able to do my broker license, because he was the one who was with Henry
during that time
while I was trying to get through it. So I think support
absolutely
was, you know, the biggest thing.
And he got to have a little bit of time off during that time, which I think also showed him how much more he wanted to be home, because he got to see so much of the development of Henry.
Well, and I think too, because he was still actually off, the employer that he works for, they were laid off during the pandemic. And so when I went back to work after mat leave, like, he would literally just open the door, drop food on my desk, and leave. And then, you know, at times ask me, hey, are you going to come out for dinner? Like, what are you doing in there? I think balance is a hard thing to achieve, because first of all, it's trying to figure out what that is. And by the time you feel like you have, it's changed.
Well, I think it's more that maybe
outside influences have changed.
Right.
And
your goals have changed.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
But
you don't know what you're balancing yet until you find out what you're looking for.
Well, I still don't know exactly what I'm balancing, but I feel like I have a lot more autonomy.
Yeah.
That I am able to spend the time that I want to with my son, not only when I'm able to.
Yep.
So that's a big, big difference for me.
Yeah.
I've always liked to travel.
Yes.
I think, again, that's just something that the pandemic kind of highlighted. When you can't for 2 years, it's, you know, I really want to get out.
Yeah.
And it's not even that, you know, I need to travel overseas or hours away.
No.
We have a family cottage, and I like to spend time up there.
Yep.
And previously, I was only able to spend a weekend here and there. Like, forget about ever trying to spend a week up there, because being able to be available even when you're off was not easy then. We didn't have the same connectivity up there as we do now. But last year I was able to work and enjoy the cottage for 5 weeks last summer.
Yep.
But it also gives me that time and space to go back to the biggest place that I love, Nova Scotia.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So being able to, you know, hop on a flight or jump in a car and still work and play, essentially.
Well, and it kept speaking to, there's got to be a better way then.
There's got to be
a better way for me to spend more time with Henry and still be able to put out what I love into the world, which It's not what I love, but mortgages seems to be what you love, so.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry, because, yeah, I could literally talk about it all day.
And she will.
Oh,
you know
and
what
I
mean?
do. I do. I know I do. Even if I'm at a restaurant and I hear the word mortgage, I'm like, oh, what are they saying? You know, because it's my ears just perk up a little bit.
Right,
right. But where I was going with being able to work and play in Nova Scotia, the biggest thing now is having systems and support.
Yep.
And so, you know, being in my previous role, I couldn't always do things the way that I wanted to do them in a way that worked for me to achieve that work-life balance. Right. And so now that I have those processes, systems, support in place, my clients don't even know if I'm in my own office or if I'm in a different country.
Right.
Right?
Right. Once you had done your brokerage license and you had now been on a team that you actually felt supported in, that's when you went after your Nova Scotia license, hopefully to be able to travel back there some more. But can you talk a little bit more about getting that dual license?
Yeah, so I mean, it became apparent pretty quickly. Some of the clients that I've dealt with in years past, you know, a lot of them, the same thing. The pandemic kind of highlighted what's important. Where do I want to be? What does my lifestyle look like? And a lot more people were deciding to sell their homes here and move out east. Yeah. And so it was just something that kept coming up, and it was, you know, how do I continue to help these people that I've developed relationships with? And it just made sense. It was like, okay, here's the answer. Right. I'm gonna work on being licensed in Nova Scotia. So not only for my clients here that are looking to move down there, but also to be able to help and support my friends and family that I have out there. My warm market isn't as big out there. My family is much larger out there. Huge. Huge. But yeah, it wasn't just, oh, I could be licensed and I'm gonna make more money. Right. Right. It was, I talk about how I care about my clients, and I do a lot. And if my family is who resides out there currently, why am I not helping them? Yep. Right? Yep. And for my clients that live here and are used to processing mortgages here, are now going to a completely different to a different province where things are done a little differently. And they more than likely, and they're not used to the pace, let me tell you. Yeah, the pace is much slower. Yeah. They're used to the fast pace with the brokers from Ontario. They're not used to the pace down there. So it was just a perfect pairing. Yep. Right? Yep. So I'm able to walk them through, what is this going to look like on this side when you're, you know, selling your house and putting those things in place, and what is it going to look like if we're putting a mortgage in place or a secured line of credit because maybe they don't need a mortgage anymore, but let's, you know, at least set you up for success in the future. And it just makes sense. Yep. That's really what it comes down to. I saw this Nova Scotia's advertising at the beginning of the pandemic. I thought was fantastic. They were like, working from home during the pandemic, home can be anywhere. And then it would just be like these beautiful panoramic shots of Nova Scotia. And then it would like all these advertisements around it, or what would be fed to me next usually would be like a real estate agent out there or a house or like a gorgeous home. And it would be like, this like 4,000 square foot property for 200 grand on the water. And I'd be like, how is this even possible? How are people So we had a friend that actually moved down to New Brunswick, but they had shared a duplex with us for many years when we were kids. And just even there, it put both of them into retirement early because they were like, it made sense. We're going to be selling a house here for X amount of dollars and buying a house that had more land, more space. For a third of the price. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more to how people are actually using
the move to Nova Scotia as a way of restructuring their debt, their life, etc. Because really, if you are seeking a slower pace, then maybe looking at a different province, and our favorite other province is our recommendation. But
yeah, I think that's exactly what you just said. It's popular now because they can retire a little bit earlier, right? So if they had sold here and tried to downsize, in some cases, when you're downsizing, you're almost paying the same, if not more, than what you originally bought the other house for.
Right.
So
especially when you start adding in like condo fees and
right.
Anyways.
So unless you're moving in with a family member and someone's been nice enough to build you a granny suite, you know, it really eats up the equity that you've built in order to maintain that lifestyle going forward. Right. So if you don't have any certain ties or connections in which would keep you here, it is a good strategy to, you know, sell for a higher price here and take the savings that you have. Talk to a financial advisor.
Yes.
Someone I could pair you with. And then, moving out there, buying a property for a third of the price, and then having savings to carry you through.
Right. Well, and the one thing I think there's a little bit of a misconception about Nova Scotia is it is a slower pace, but one of my favorite cities I've ever been to in my life is still Halifax.
Oh,
and it is not as quick pace as being in Ontario, let's say.
Right.
But it is a live city. Like, it is lively.
Yeah.
Any places, your favorites in Nova Scotia?
Oh,
I could go back to that tequila bar. I don't even really drink at all anymore, but tequila.
Well, I was going to say Lot 6, the restaurant that was right beside. Yeah.
Was that where I got that that beautiful old fashioned? And those oysters?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And
best old fashioned I've ever been. Oh my God. Yeah, sorry. That was one of the best meals. And it was just like Appy's. And this guy shaved that ice into a by hand. Perfect sphere.
Yeah.
Lot 6.
And I love that you were just so descriptive about that, like that time that we were there, because it brings so much joy.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you get to experience certain things like that out in the East Coast, like nothing really compares to it. And it wasn't just the food.
Nope.
It was the bartender who was
fantastic.
So kind the whole time we were there. Right?
It really is like it's not just a different pace. Like, people live by that different pace.
Yeah.
It's kinder. It is a lot more warm. You can have a conversation anywhere. Anyone will talk to you. It's great. And
it's helpful when you say, oh, our family's from down here, because then it seems to open even more of a conversation.
Right. Where are you from?
Yeah, where are you from? I was actually on the phone the other day with an underwriter, and I could tell right away that he was from Nova Scotia somewhere. Right. So he lives in Halifax now. Ooh. He's from Westville. Oh. So he's like, weird. Yeah, like I live just outside of New Glasgow. And I was like, oh, cool. Like my whole family lives there. And he's like, yeah, it's like a little town. You wouldn't know of it. And I'm like, bet you it's Westville. Because that's what everyone says.
Right.
Hey, I'm from New Glasgow.
Right.
But I'm actually from a little town. And so he was trying to figure out which of our family members he knew. And you know, it became more than just an underwriting call. Right. But again, it just goes back to that kindness and what they
can chat.
Anybody who goes there always says how they have a great time and the people are so nice there.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. The living and working in Nova Scotia, I think, it's a very attractive feature that's caught on for so many.
Yeah. Their housing prices are just ridiculously low in comparison. Do you know what the housing pricing is in comparison, roughly?
Well, right now it depends what market you're in Ontario, right?
Of course, yes.
Like we still have pockets where even though we saw a dip in housing prices, there's still pockets that weren't affected. Yep. Right. And then there's other cities that were affected greatly. So to give you a true comparison between down there and Ontario right now is a little bit difficult. But the other piece, which can be a large expense, is property taxes.
Right.
Like, I know my grandfather, he's like, oh, that's how much you pay in a month? I pay that in a year.
Right.
It's like...
Right. Yeah. That's
right? Like, I need to reevaluate my expenses.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. When you really factor in everything, it's not just a mortgage payment. It's property taxes. It is then inflation where you live, etc. But there's so much more to owning a home and the expenses that come out of it. And that can change a lot when you move a province.
Yep. Most lenders can still do financing across Canada.
Yep.
I think as a broker kind of specializing in 2 different provinces,
right,
I know the ins and outs in one,
yep,
and I know the ins and outs of the other.
Yeah.
So where if you're going to a traditional lender that can kind of do a broad span across the country, yep, do they know how the title insurance works there? Do they know how the property taxes are,
right,
how they're scheduled, how they're paid?
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of
absolutely
small parts,
yep,
that make up a big picture.
Right. Well, and
if you're looking for guidance, not just on one piece of it and then hoping that you're going to get the same support in another.
That is a great point.
That it's seamless all the way through.
And now, as a broker, you have had family use your help, but oftentimes you can actually help them before the brokerage space. So you use your specialties to help find people.
Yep.
There. So you've actually now have a professional network out in Nova Scotia. And I think that kind of is the bigger ticket.
Yeah.
Is now, instead of going online and
picking
the best real estate agent who has the best marketing, it is...
Yeah.
I have a sense of connection to this person because Vanessa actually knows them.
Right.
Well, thank you for retelling your story to me. But
it's also a long story, but
we missed a lot though. But in a good way. You've had a really beautiful journey so far, and very excited for you coming up in the broker space. We're going to be doing lots of fun stuff. But anyways, just wanted to say that I'm very proud of you, and I'm excited to see what else you do in the broker space. And thank you for having me on today.
I'm excited to see what I do in the broker space. So.
You've already done a lot. You've had a really good first year.
I did.
You had a really wicked first year.
With a lot of support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a controversial woman who once said, "It takes a village." And I really think it does.
Oh.
Absolutely. It takes a village.
Yeah, I would never argue that statement.
No. And I think, especially having gone those first couple months of the pandemic alone, raising a brand new baby, that's all you need to build your resilience. So very excited for you.
Don't forget to join the conversation by commenting which topics you would like covered next.